Sir, you're under HOA arrest. I blinked, coffee steaming in my hand, half-dressed in my robe, standing on my own driveway at 6:47 a.m. when two polyester-wrapped buffoons with plastic badges marched up like they were on a Homeland episode, zip ties in hand, matching clipboards. I swear the dew hadn't even evaporated and they were already ready to detain me. For what? Unauthorized vehicle presence. My own truck. My FBI-issued reinforced Ford F-150 sitting in my own driveway. That's when I knew. These morons had no idea who they were messing with. Let me back up. My name's Marcus Donovan, and I've spent the last 15 years working undercover for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, busting up money launderers, arms traffickers, and cartel fronts that make Tony Montana look like a kindergarten teacher. But I traded that in. Retired, moved to Willowbrook Estates, 847 homes of suburban bliss, manicured lawns, lemon-scented trash days, and until recently, peace. 3 months in, I was loving it. My neighbors waved. The sprinklers whistled in the mornings like a symphony of normal. Then she arrived, Brenda Kensington, a name that now tastes like battery acid in this neighborhood. The new HOA president with hair like a helmet and attitude like Mussolini. She didn't just run the HOA, she was the HOA. And in less than a week, she turned our quiet cul-de-sac into a gated gulag run by power-tripping clipboard warriors. The orange violation slips came fast. First, my truck. Commercial vehicle parked in residential space, $300 fine. Then my garden hose. Non-compliant hose storage method, $150 fine. I kid you not. I was fined for not wrapping my hose like a sailor's knot. But what triggered me most wasn't the money, it was the selective enforcement. Because the same lifted F-150 parked on the same block, owned by Greg the golfer who plays poker with Brenda's husband, it didn't get so much as a warning. See, I know a shakedown when I see one. Brenda wasn't just enforcing rules, she was selling protection. Comply, kiss the ring, or get punished. And unfortunately for her, she didn't realize she'd just declared war on a guy who spent his life dismantling rackets built exactly like hers. And this wasn't going to end with a town hall meeting, this was going federal. Brenda didn't just show up with a clipboard, she came with a plan, a franchise of fear. Turns out she didn't just run the HOA, she owned the enforcement company. Willowbrook Compliance Solutions, a shiny LLC she conveniently hired without competitive bidding. Oh, and her husband? Deputy Rick Kensington. That's right, HOA power couple from hell. She wrote the tickets, he enforced the silence, and together they built a regime that made Soviet-era neighborhood watch seem like Sesame Street. 3 weeks after Brenda's power grab, I found a bright orange citation zip-tied to my mailbox like a ransom note. My crime? Operating a commercial vehicle in a residential zone. Mind you, this was the same truck I'd driven for 3 peaceful months, the same truck 5 other guys parked around the block, but apparently their trucks didn't violate the community aesthetic. When I called the HOA, Brenda answered like a villainess who got promoted from customer service to dictator overnight. Her tone could cut granite. Those residents are compliant in other areas, she said. I asked what areas. She replied, HOA board discretion supersedes written rules. I've interrogated cartel bosses who made more sense. That's when I started digging. It wasn't just me, there was a pattern. Holiday decorations, political yard signs, work trucks. She was targeting specific people, people who looked too working class, people who didn't vote like she did, people who dared to ask questions. Brenda's HOA wasn't about protecting property values, it was about controlling people. The kicker? She invented a safety patrol, neon vests, clipboards, matching hats. These weren't neighborhood helpers, they were deputized gossip mongers. Suddenly, Janet from 2 houses down was photographing me retrieving my own mail. Bob across the street started recording my trash day routine. It was surveillance theater, badly produced, poorly cast, but no less invasive. But what Brenda didn't know is that I'm trained in counter-surveillance. I saw every amateur move, and I started collecting my own data. Timestamps, camera angles, even facial expressions. You want to play watchdog? Fine. But I bite back harder. By then, I wasn't alone. Sarah from Maple Street knocked one night with a plate of cookies and a story about being fined for excessive Halloween decor. 3 pumpkins. Dave from Oak got cited for landscaping outside acceptable standards. He planted native wildflowers. Mrs. Chen got flagged for loitering while walking her dog. We were the undesirables, the non-compliant, the ones who wouldn't play nice with Brenda's clipboard mafia. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. It was us versus the empire. Retaliation came swift and petty. Just 2 days after our underground meeting, complete with Sarah's rebellion cookies, I received a new violation. This time, it was a $500 fine for intimidating conduct toward HOA officials. My alleged offense? Asking for documentation at a public HOA meeting, not yelling, not threatening, just requesting paperwork. Brenda had weaponized bureaucracy like it was a taser. If you dared to question her clipboard empire, she labeled you a threat. But Brenda wasn't done. Oh no, she wanted control over every inch of the neighborhood. That's when she announced the creation of the Willowbrook Enforcement Division. Yes, she actually called it that. It sounded like a rejected villain organization from a Marvel movie, and it got worse. Enter Tyler and Brad, her unemployed nephew, as suddenly promoted to HOA enforcement officers. They showed up in matching dark blue uniforms, patches shaped like badges, cheap tactical belts, mirrored sunglasses, and boots that looked stolen from a paintball field. And the cherry on top? A white Ford Explorer with magnetic decals that screamed HOA enforcement like a suburban SWAT van. I swear I could smell their Axe body spray before I saw them. Their job? To patrol the neighborhood and enforce community standards, which apparently meant harassing anyone who wasn't on Brenda's approved resident list. They patrolled like mall cops on meth, stopping neighbors mid-walk to question their HOA compliance, issuing verbal citations, and photographing mailboxes like they were raiding the post office. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so illegal. Because here's the thing Brenda didn't calculate. Tyler and Brad weren't just jerks in polyester. They were impersonating law enforcement. Felony. And I happen to be someone who trains actual federal agents on how to spot fake authority. So while they were measuring grass height with rulers and filming Mrs. Chen's dog walks, I was building a federal case. Every encounter was filmed, with timestamps, facial IDs, and voice prints. I pulled property records, budget allocations, vendor invoices, found out that Brenda's company, Willowbrook Compliance Solutions, had gone from a $400 maintenance contract to a $3,200 monthly payout, all approved without bids. Brenda was siphoning HOA money like a Vegas casino skims poker chips. I created spreadsheets, audio logs, financial flowcharts that would make the IRS cry tears of joy. I wasn't documenting violations. I was documenting a criminal enterprise. The final straw? Tyler flagged me for jaywalking within subdivision boundaries. Jaywalking, in a cul-de-sac with no sidewalks. And that's when I smiled. Because now I had everything I needed to bring the whole HOA regime crashing down. The next morning, I walked to my mailbox like I was stepping into a war zone. Tyler spotted me from across the street. Clipboard in one hand, radio clipped to his belt like he was on loan from the Pentagon. He marched over with Brad, lumbering behind him like a sleep-deprived linebacker. "Sir, I'm citing you for jaywalking within subdivision boundaries." I blinked. "There are no sidewalks." "HOA regulations supersede municipal traffic laws," Brad said, reading from a laminated flashcard like it was the 10 Commandments. I looked around, hoping Ashton Kutcher would leap from a bush and yell, "Punked." "Let me see some ID," Tyler demanded, hand twitching near his fake utility belt. That's when it happened. He reached for his radio and called it in like he was Jack Bauer. 911, this is Officer Tyler with Willowbrook Enforcement. We need police assistance. Resident is refusing lawful HOA compliance. He called real police. On me. A federal agent for getting my mail. I smiled. While the clip-on soldiers fumbled with their laminated lies, I stepped back into my garage and called someone who actually matters. My old FBI colleague, Mike, now working civil rights at the Bureau. "Hey, Mike, remember that 1983 civil liberties case you were hungry for?" I asked. "I've got a buffet." Minutes later, neighbors started gathering like it was fight night. Mrs. Patterson brought her cat like it was her emotional support spectator. Dave brought lawn chairs. Even reclusive Mr. Garcia emerged in his slippers to watch. Then came the sirens. 2 squad cars rolled in. One was a beat cop I didn't recognize. The other? Deputy Rick Kensington, Brenda's husband, in full uniform. He was there not to defuse the situation, but to defend his wife's backyard Gestapo. "What's the problem?" the officer asked. Tyler straightened up, chest puffed. "This resident is obstructing official HOA enforcement and refused to show ID. It was perfect. I reached slowly for my wallet. Neighbors leaned forward like a crowd of, "It's a magic show." And then, I flipped it open. Marcus Donovan, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I let the badge glint in the morning sun like it was God's flashlight. Rick's jaw tightened. Brad went pale. Tyler's swagger died so fast I thought I heard a thud. "These two," I said calmly, "just attempted to detain a federal agent under fake authority." The silence? Deafening. Except for the soft, satisfying sound of Brenda's HOA empire beginning to crack. You'd think the badge drop would have been the final nail, that Tyler and Brad would slink off to rethink their life choices, that Brenda might step back, call a lawyer, maybe even apologize. You'd be wrong. 3 days later, real police showed up at my door. Not to arrest Tyler or Brad, not to investigate impersonation of law enforcement, but to follow up on a report Brenda filed claiming I had physically threatened her during the mailbox standoff. I opened the door, still sipping my morning coffee, and there stood Deputy Rick Kensington, accompanied by a younger officer, Martinez, who looked like he just wanted to survive the day without getting sued. Rick read from his little notebook with all the enthusiasm of a man forced to arrest his wife's nemesis on fabricated charges. "Mrs. Kensington alleges that you made threatening gestures and used intimidating language during a prior HOA encounter," he said, voice cracking just a bit. "Officer Martinez," I said, turning to the sane one, "you aware that Deputy Kensington is the husband of the complainant?" Martinez gave the kind of nod you only see from men who've already emailed HR twice that week. I pulled out my phone. Did she mention the entire encounter was recorded? I hit play. And suddenly, Tyler's voice echoed in my front doorway. "We're certified HOA enforcement officers with full legal authority." Rick turned a color I've only seen in overripe tomatoes. The audio was clear, no threats, no raised voices, just two fake cops trying to act tough and a resident asking them for legal justification. "This interview is over," Martinez announced. Smart man. He could smell the lawsuit in the air. Rick turned to leave. I didn't stop him. I let him walk off, red-faced and seething, because I had what I needed. A falsified police report, a conflict of interest, an audio recording, and a badge that said, "I don't bluff." But I wasn't done. As Rick drove away with the weight of a pending internal affairs complaint hanging over him, I called Mike back at the bureau. "It's official. Brenda's gone full dictator. We've got impersonation, malicious prosecution, financial fraud, and civil rights violations. I'm going to need Section 1983 paperwork, and maybe RICO." Mike whistled. "Copy that. Time to build the case." And while Brenda was busy weaponizing her clipboard, I was activating the Department of Justice. It was no longer neighborhood drama. This was becoming a federal operation. The gears of justice grind slowly, but they grind brutally. Within 24 hours, Mike and a forensic accountant were at my kitchen table, coffee brewing while the neighborhood's most feared spreadsheet took shape. We documented everything: monthly payments to Brenda's company, duplicate invoices, fines levied without board votes. We even uncovered a clause buried on page 47 of the HOA contract that made my blood run cold. And then boil. Turns out Willowbrook Compliance Solutions was receiving 15% of all fines collected, on top of their $20,400 monthly management fee. Every bogus violation, every dog poop ticket, every mailbox measurement, direct money in Brenda's pocket. But Brenda wasn't done being Brenda. The very next morning, just before sunrise, I was loading gear into my truck when I heard it, heavy boots crunching on my gravel driveway. I turned slowly to see two men approaching, not Tyler and Brad. These were licensed security guards in full tactical gear, dressed like SWAT officers fresh from a clearance sale. Flak vests, handcuffs, zip ties. "Sir, you're under HOA arrest for unauthorized vehicle modifications," the lead one announced like he was reading a warrant from the Supreme Court. Let me say that again. HOA arrest for a truck in my driveway. I took one long, slow breath, the kind I used to take before walking into cartel headquarters, and reached calmly into my jacket. "I advise you to stop," the second guard said, hand hovering over plastic cuffs. I pulled out my badge. Special Agent Marcus Donovan, FBI. The badge glinted like divine judgment in the morning light. And you've just attempted to detain a federal officer under false pretenses. Their faces drained faster than HOA funds into Brenda's checking account. We were just following orders, one stammered. Whose orders? I asked, though we all knew. Mrs. Kensington said we had full legal authority. Perfect. Brenda had just authorized impersonation of law enforcement by contracted personnel. That's a federal crime in writing, on camera, with witnesses. Neighbors began to gather again. Mrs. Patterson clutched her cat like it was a furry witness. The Johnsons rolled up with travel mugs. You could smell the popcorn in the air. And I made the call. Mike, send the team. We've got attempted unlawful detention, impersonation of federal officers, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. Tell DOJ it's game time. The sound of approaching real sirens cut through the morning like a war cry. Brenda had just kicked the wrong hornet's nest, and this time it was wearing a suit from the United States government. The next HOA meeting wasn't just a gathering, but it was a trial by fire. Word had spread fast. The FBI was involved. The Department of Justice had sent people into our quiet cul-de-sac. And Brenda? She still strutted into the community center wearing her signature sunglasses, clipboard held like a child, and that terrifying perfume that smelled like citrus and dictatorship. But this time she didn't own the room. I entered with 8 neighbors behind me. Our little resistance, now armed with manila folders, notarized statements, and enough legal evidence to bankrupt a small country. Sarah, Dave, Mrs. Chen, and even grumpy Mr. Garcia, who hadn't left his porch in 5 years, now stood shoulder to shoulder like revolutionaries. I walked to the front, nodded to the crowd, and laid down 4 massive binders. Financial records, state statutes, HOA bylaws, security guard licenses. Then I hit play on the projector, audio clips, videos, body cam footage, all of it. Every illegal fine, every fake arrest attempt, every conflict of interest, all of it documented, time-stamped, and now public. Gasps rippled through the room like a storm surge. Brenda stood frozen, mouth open, clipboard trembling. Deputy Rick, sitting in the back like a child who broke the cookie jar, looked like he was about to vomit. One neighbor whispered, "Oh my God." Another muttered, "That explains everything." Then I dropped the nuclear truth. I slid a copy of the HOA's original management contract across the table. Highlighted in yellow was the poison clause. Willowbrook Compliance Solutions shall receive 15% of all fines collected, plus base monthly compensation. I looked Brenda dead in the eyes. So every dog bark violation, every political sign fine, every bogus vehicle citation, all of it was your personal income stream. Silence. Then the sound that changed everything, a chair scraping back. It was Mr. Thompson, the HOA's longest-serving board member. I moved to immediately suspend Brenda Kensington from all enforcement duties pending formal investigation. The room erupted, hands raised, voices echoed, the motion passed unanimously. Brenda dropped her clipboard, and then, the final blow. I stood tall and addressed the room. Let the record show, federal charges are being filed. This isn't just an HOA issue anymore. It's fraud. It's impersonation. It's civil rights violations. A pause. Then I added the phrase, I want every viewer watching this video to comment right now if they believe justice should be louder than a clipboard. No king in the cul-de-sac. Say it twice. Make it echo across the algorithm. Say it for every neighbor who's ever been silenced. Because this isn't just about Brenda. It's about every HOA tyrant who thought they could rule without rules. Within a week, our quiet suburb became front-page news. Channel 7's van parked outside the clubhouse like it was a crime scene, because, well, it was. Reporters camped on sidewalks. Headlines screamed, FBI investigates HOA overreach, and homeowners file federal complaint against rogue board president. Brenda tried to keep up appearances, walking her poodle like nothing was happening. But every morning her walk got shorter. Every neighbor she used to glare down now watched her like a predator on a leash. Even the poodle looked embarrassed. DOJ investigators arrived in black Suburbans. I walked them through every document, every violation, every fake law enforcement stunt. Their faces were stone, but their pens never stopped moving. Can you confirm this HOA hired unlicensed security to detain residents? One asked. Not just that, I said, sliding a printed screenshot across the table. They wore patches shaped like sheriff's badges and used language reserved for peace officers. That's impersonation. And Brenda authorized it in writing. The investigator looked up. You understand this could qualify for federal conspiracy charges, right? I just nodded. By then, we'd uncovered even more. Brenda had backdated board meeting minutes, forged signatures on approval forms, and redirected HOA funds into a shadow bank account titled Willowbrook Compliance Revenue, $34,672.86 sounds unaccounted for, untaxed, unexplained. Rick, Italy filed for early retirement. Tyler and Brad, gone, reportedly fled to Nevada to start fresh. But the internet never forgets. One of our neighbors posted their mugshots side by side on Facebook with the caption, HOA enforcement, now hiring at Chuck E. Cheese. We laughed, but we weren't done. My attorney filed a Section 1983 federal lawsuit on behalf of 8 residents. Violation of civil rights under color of law. Brenda's clipboard dreams just became a federal tort. The HOA board, now fully awake and fully terrified, held an emergency meeting. Brenda was removed. All current enforcement activity suspended. Residents given full amnesty for unpaid fines going back 18 months. I received an official apology and an unmarked envelope containing a $2,000 refund check for erroneously processed violations. No note, no name, just that thin white flag in corporate form. But the real justice? Watching Brenda pack up her Mercedes SUV with the Compliance Queen bumper sticker under the judgmental eyes of 74 neighbors and 2 federal agents with clipboards of their own. Sometimes karma comes in the form of a badge. Sometimes it comes with spreadsheets. But in Willowbrook Estates, it came with a neighborhood that finally said enough. You'd think the story ends there, that Brenda fades into exile, that justice rides off into the sunset with a badge and a grin, but stories like this don't really end, not in America's suburbs. 3 months after Brenda vanished from Willowbrook Estates, the board hired a new management company. Transparency was the buzzword now. Monthly reports published, enforcement paused, residents invited to vote on every decision, even the color of the dog park bench. But underneath the manicured lawns and handshakes at the block party, something lingers. Because here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud, the HOA system was built to be abused. It gives small people big power with no training, no oversight, and just enough legality to feel unstoppable. Clip bows. Cards become weapons, fines become currency, and your front yard becomes the battlefield. If you push back, you're labeled a problem, a violator, a threat, until someone like me shows up. Now, I don't say that out of pride, I say it out of warning. Because for every Brenda who gets caught, there are 1,000 more learning how to weaponize bylaws, harass residents, and cash in on silence. I've seen it. In HOA groups across states, stories that make mine look tame. A veteran evicted for flying a flag, a single mom fined for her kid's sidewalk chalk, a cancer patient threatened over lawn height while she was undergoing chemo. And those are the stories that make it out. What about the ones that don't? That's why I filed one final motion. A petition to the state legislature, public HOA audits, clear enforcement boundaries, independent ombudsman, because if we don't fix the system, it'll keep breeding Brendas like bad mold behind fresh drywall. And you watching this video, you might not be in Willowbrook, but your cul-de-sac could be next. So here's what I want you to do. In the comments below, say it again, and say it louder this time. No king in the cul-de-sac, because we are the ones who pay the dues. We are the ones who own the land. And no board, no badge, no polyester dictator gets to rule without consent. So share this with your neighbors, your HOA group, that one guy who always parks slightly crooked. Let this video be your warning shot. Because the next time someone with a clipboard knocks on your door, you might want to check who they're really working for. And if you're listening, Brenda, you should have picked a different mailbox.